Hi, it's Brandon from ThirstGym.com. Today we're talking about exercise called the conventional rack pull or the conventional pin pull, also just sometimes called the pin pull, but we're mainly using this in the conventional stance. Now, some people will also call this deadlifting off pins. There's tons of different names, but in my opinion, it's a rack pull. What you're usually trying to do with an exercise like this is one, decrease range of motion, and two, usually you're trying to aim at deadlifting from around a sticking point or work on your lockout. Now, there's benefits and of course, positive and negative things that can come from this exercise. So first of all, let's talk about the difference between a pin pull and a block pull. So the main difference between a pin pull and a block pull is that obviously you're pinning off pins or blocks, but because of where the weights sit, they break differently. So as you can see, the pin's here on the inside of the weights. That means the weight is going to break much differently than it would be if I had this elevated on mats or blocks, as the flex in the bar is going to mimic what happens in real life when you go to deadlift on the platform or in training. So if you want to be close towards a meet or whatever, my suggestion is block pulls all the way. I think block pulls are going to mimic that, especially using deadlift bars. That whip and everything in the bar is very specific, and you're not going to get that from a pin. So just keep that in mind. The weight's going to continue to break, and then go. Where this, when it breaks, it's just going to break off there and go with you, okay? So just make sure you understand that. The other one is that I think depending on where you train, sometimes setting up pins might be easier, but you also got to think about the damage of equipment and banging up equipment. So I personally like pulling off blocks and mats more than I like pin pulls, but I do think pin pulls have their place. And again, if you're very limited on equipment, space, and things like that, I understand. So what we're going to do here is I've got this set up on my lowest pin setting for this particular rack. For me, this is about knee height. I would say set these up where you need issues. So you might need to set it down here, you might need to set it up here. Again, most people need to set these below the knee because the goal is trying to get a good position after we get past the knee, okay? But anyways, you're just going to treat this like your regular deadlift, but essentially less range of motion. So what we're going to do here, big breath at the top, arms long, grab the bar, pull the slack out, drive your hips through, and then come down. So notice I'm keeping that in close, driving my butt to meet the bar, and then letting it come to a complete dead stop. Now, an exercise like this, you're usually going to load up pretty heavy. You're probably not going to do a bunch of reps. But the other thing to make sure that you're aware of with a pin pull is that a lot of times you're going to want to try to scoop underneath it, okay? Because you're able to get almost like more forward under the bar than you can if you've got like the blocks or your normal deadlift. So what you're going to find is that people that set around that knee height area, they're going to try to almost like scoop underneath it because they're able to kind of pull themselves into that position, if that makes sense. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just try it. You'll definitely be able to tell the difference immediately. And you probably see people, especially when they have it above the knees, they definitely kind of do this like I said, they kind of do this thing, okay? Definitely tell me that you need to work on those glutes, and again, set the pins a little bit lower. So, again, you're also going to be here, wedge yourself, drive to meet the bar. Don't pull backwards, bring your hips towards the bar. Now, when it comes to programming, I think this works great, one, for a max effort-based exercise. If you're limited on space, you don't have the mats, you're really trying to work on positioning, in particular your lockout, setting these pins low enough to where you need them, or again high enough. Most people generally need it about just underneath the underneath the kneecap, right below the kneecap, and work on that transition of getting their hips forward after that bar has reached the hardest point biomechanically, which is usually about right here because it's the furthest out in front of you. So you could definitely do that. The other option is to set this up as a supplemental based exercise to target your weakness. However, with the pins, make sure you let the weight stop each time so you're having to work on creating that force. You don't want to bounce them off the pins. You don't want to let it sit there just for a short period of time so you can use that built up energy that you've had from the previous rep to continue pulling. Let it come to a complete stop. So maybe cluster singles or something you want to try if you're somebody that really benefits from that stretch shortening cycle piece. Let it come to complete stop. And then the other big factor is if you're going to work on your lockout, so you've got a little bit higher, you could basically tap it and just come right here and try to do that for time with a very, very low percentage of your 1 rep max, like 50% or something like that. And just really, you're probably gonna wanna use straps and things like that. But again, a really good option to really work on driving those hips forward and keeping the time under tension there, kind of almost like a quasi RDL pin pull based combo. We had really good success with that as well. So that's just the conventional pin pull or the conventional deadlift off pins, whatever you really want to call it. Doesn't really matter. To me, it's a rack pull. But it's a great way to improve your deadlift. There's just some very subtle things that you can really botch on an exercise like this. And you'll feel like, oh man, I did these a whole training cycle and my lockout never got better. Either you set it too high or you weren't being honest with how you were setting it up and getting underneath the bar literally to lock it out. You're trying to scoop underneath it rather than trying to actually get it closer to mimicking your deadlift, which is again why I kind of favor the mats personally. So if you got any questions though, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. Thanks. Have a great day.